Welcome to Pods with Posh and Paul, a podcast designed to inspire and challenge listeners through story, experience and insight. To face adversity, learn from suffering and discover how to embrace life with a heart filled with love and gratitude. We are so thrilled to have you journey with us and can't wait to share your stories. Join Sue O'Callaghan and Joanne Webb as we disrupt the theory that everyone has perfect lives.
Hi, welcome and thanks so much for listening. Today we have with us a martial arts expert who has been teaching physical self-defense for over 20 years. His approach to self-defense is very different to what we currently know and isn't all about fast ninja moves. He's all about empowering women, which we absolutely love. He's the author of a new book, FemPowerment, The Future of Women's Self-Defense and Empowerment, and the founder of Project FemPowerment. He is spiritual, is all about healthy mind, body and soul, and works deeply with intuition. Today, we are thrilled and excited to hear from Otto Heutling. Hi, Otto, and welcome to the show.
Hi, how you doing?
Hello, welcome. We're very pleased to have you on board.
Glad to be here.
Oh, it's lovely to have you with us, Otto. If our listeners are anything like me, when they imagine a woman probably young and fit, karate kicking, a stranger in a dark alley or parking garage, so could you explain and give us the philosophy behind FemPowerment?
Well, I've been teaching, as you mentioned already, I've been teaching physical self-defense for 20 years. And I think the general opinion of what self-defense is, that it's fighting back against a physical attack.
Yeah.
So for that, then you need to learn some kind of fighting moves. But I think it's a bit short-sighted to look at it like that. I think there's more important things to learn if your goal is actually to be safe, and then you'd have to look at why people actually learn self-defense. So if your goal is with learning self-defense to learn how to fight, then you got to learn how to fight. But for most people, it's actually more so that they don't want to get into a fight, that they want to avoid those kind of situations, that they just want to be safe. And if that's the case, then to just focus on ninja moves is not the most effective way to approach this, I would say.
So Otto, can I just interrupt you there and just ask you, what type of violence or self-defense are we talking about? Are we talking about domestic violence situations in the family at home? Are we talking about attacks in the street? What type of attacks are you focusing on here?
It doesn't really matter. I think there's underlying principles that apply to all of those situations.
Because we're talking, I was looking at some statistics earlier in Australia, and it says that 1 in 6 women have experienced stalking since the age of 18. It says 40% of women experience violence from their partner even if they're separated. 85% of Australian women have been sexually harassed at some time. So the figures are astounding, aren't they, for women?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
think
absolutely.
for me as a woman, what concerns me is my weakness in terms of my size against a powerful, strong man. So how do you approach that when a woman is so much more inferior in theory because of their size? How does FemPowerment come into that?
Well, what you just mentioned is a huge problem. You are in size inferior to the attacker, most likely. And if that's the case, then to rely on fighting moves is a huge problem, because not everyone can learn that. I've been doing martial arts for 35 years, and to think that you can proficiently learn to defend yourself against a physical attack in often questions that I often get is what do I do if I get attacked from behind in a dark alley, or what do I do if someone attacks me with a knife? And it's crazy to think that you can just learn some moves and that'll prepare you for that kind of situations. There's much more important things that don't rely on you being physically strong.
So what you're talking about is to be prepared in advance and to know about dangerous situations that you can get yourself in, to be picking up on your intuition when you feel unsafe. So it's actually preparing yourself before a situation could occur where you could be in an attack situation.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is that you understand how self-defense works, like the whole psychology about why attacks happen in the first place and how to deal with these situations is the most important thing, and that's what most people lack. Most people think, first of all, that the self-defense situation starts with an attack, and then what do? Well, you have to fight back, but I think that's a problem that not everyone can solve. But if you understand how self-defense works and why this happens in the first place, and how to de-escalate situations, how to recognize situations, before they happen, before they get dangerous, then it gives you completely different tools of how to deal with that.
So I love the fact that you are running training courses. So I've come to you as a woman really keen to understand new techniques that I feel safe. Could you run me through what your program would look like? What would I be coming to learn?
Well, most self-defense training focuses on the ninja moves, so to speak, and well, ninja moves work mainly for ninjas, and most people aren't ninjas. So, like for me, even though I've been teaching physical moves for a long time, it's unrealistic for most people to learn, although I still teach that a little bit, but it's only a part of what I teach, and it's by far the hardest part to learn and to apply.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Otto. Sue and I were talking before about the moves, weren't we? Because, like, as you said, one, it's hard to teach, one, it's hard to learn, but then you can have every ninja move down pat in a classroom or when you're sparring with your partner, but then in an actual situation, you have got no idea how your body's going to respond, do you?
Exactly. There's another problem, right? So just because you can do the ninja moves in class doesn't mean at all that you can actually apply that in a real life situation. Because there's adrenaline involved, you're scared, and all sorts of stuff happens, and people freeze, and nothing comes out. So, like, just learning the moves doesn't guarantee anything. So even when it gets to a fight, I think there's other things that are more important than the actual fighting moves. So, I've kind of split up self-defense situations, or the learnings of self-defense, in different phases. Like, whereas most people focus on the fighting moves, I teach my system in 4, or maybe 5 phases, if you want to look at it like that. So the first one would be your energy. Like why people get attacked in the first place. Like why do some people get selected as victims and others not? Why do people get in abusive relationships but others don't? It's the thing is that there's a huge misconception that people have that attacks are somehow random, but they're not random. Because predators look for victims. They look for someone who they can duel with. And if you understand how this works, then first of all, where you stand to start with, because of who you are. And then also it gives you different ways of how to solve that problem, rather than jumping straight to the worst case scenario of the actual attack. So, in regards to energy, like the most important tools that you have is just the way you carry yourself, your level of confidence, the way you express that confidence, because people don't really want to deal with that kind of thing. The predator doesn't want to deal with that kind of thing. Look at the way that lions hunt, for example, right? So when lions hunt, and there's a herd of antelopes in front of them, they can choose any of those, because they're the king of the jungle. They're like, at the end of the day, they can kill any of the antelopes they want if they really wanted to.
What
but
are they doing?
Don't.
Are they seeking out the weakest victim in the pack?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So you
because
saying
the thing is that they don't actually want to fight. They just want a victim.
Right.
But they just want to eat.
I know, but equally we've got to say to our listeners, we are not, if you have been attacked, obviously it's not their fault, because people can read into that, can't they? It's definitely not their fault. They may well have just obviously been in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yes, absolutely. I'm not saying at all that it's your fault. That like a lot of it has to do also with misconceptions that we just were brought up with, and that is portrayed through the media, or that was brought down from your parents. And that's what I'm saying. Like the most important that you need to understand is just how this works, so you can really do something about it from the cause of the problem, rather than looking at the actual attack.
Yeah.
But no, it's not. It's never your fault. But like when you understand the psychology behind it, then you can change certain things that before you may have never looked at.
Absolutely. I love what you say, because I can remember. We live in New Zealand now, but we used to live in England, and I feel much safer in New Zealand. But I can remember walking down the streets in England sometimes when it was dark, and I remember just always looking around me thinking, I'm going to be attacked, I'm going to be attacked. And I walked down the street probably with a sense of victimhood, whereas I didn't carry a presence of authority. And I think that's what you're saying, isn't it? If you walk with a sense of authority down the street, and you're aware of what's around, it's being aware, but actually not being a victim. Because I walked down the street saying, look, anybody come and attack me, because I felt so frightened.
Yeah.
But there's the other situation. So Sue and I were chatting before you came on as well, and it's also trusting your intuition, isn't it? When you know something's going to happen, or when you think something's going to happen, and having trust in that. Because I remember one time, it was only about 2 years ago, I went out for a walk, and it was the middle of the day. Wouldn't have even thought anything of it, but I was in quite a remote part going through the bush, and this guy just kind of appeared. And I had a funny feeling inside, and he was walking ahead of me, and he was walking quite slow, and there was just some part of me that didn't want to overtake him, even though I'm a really fast walker. Anyway, he caught his trouser on something and he pulled to one side, so I didn't think much of it then, because I'd convinced myself that everything was okay and I was just overreacting. And I walked past him really fast, and I got into my really fast pace. Well, when he started walking, he walked at my pace, and then I changed pace to try to see how it went. I slowed down, see if he would overtake me if he was in a hurry. He didn't. Every pace I took, he did it too. And then thankfully this person walked past me who had a dog, and then when I got round the corner where he couldn't see me anymore, because oh gosh, I was frightened of hurting his feelings, I then started running until I got to safety. But there was every part of me that was crying out that he was going to do something. I was too English in my way to do anything about it, which is crazy, isn't it?
So what would you say, Otto, to a woman in that situation who's walking somewhere where maybe they're on their own, they're beside a lake or trees, and there's nobody else around, and they're feeling frightened? What should they do instinctually?
Well, you brought up a lot of good points there, actually, in your story that we can elaborate on. What would I recommend? Like, first of all, I'd like to say, like what I mentioned also before already, that it's important to understand how all this works, right? Because then you can make decisions on your own.
Absolutely.
So it's not so much about saying, like when you walk in this environment, or when you're by yourself at nighttime, or then you do this, or like in this situation you do that. And a lot of people teach that kind of thing, but I think the situation always is different, and you are different. Yes. Not everyone's the same, and everyone has different responses that are correct to different scenarios, right? So what you touched on was the second phase of what I teach, which is awareness, right? So where you have to use your intuition. So firstly, like when you're walking anywhere and you have that kind of feeling about something not being right, which you said you had,
yes,
right? Then you got to go with that, because your intuition is always right according to who you are. And it doesn't mean that he is necessarily dangerous or not, but that means that according to your belief system, there's something wrong here, and then you have to go with that, right? But a lot of people, what you also said, a lot of people will override their intuitions constantly because they learn to be nice, or they learn to conform to society's standards in some way. And that's a big mistake, because that way situations get out of hand and they become progressively more dangerous and harder to deal with. But you just got to deal with the situation when it arises. But so the first thing then with awareness is that your intuitions are always right according to who you are, and you have to take action on those intuitions. That could be just to turn around and look at the guy. You got to acknowledge the problem first, but when you look at the guy, then maybe you realize that he's actually harmless, or you realize that that you're right, that the situation is actually dangerous, right? And then you take certain actions according to your new outlook. But what a lot of people will do is they just ignore that, right? And they just put their heads down and hope that nothing will happen, that they're wrong, and they want to stay, being English or polite or whatever it is,
Yes.
right? And then things get worse.
No.
Even if nothing happens, then afterwards you're probably left with some kind of insecurity and fear that something could have happened. And then next time that happens, you're in the same kind of fear again.
Yeah.
But fear, for example, is also an intuition. It's a signal,
Yes.
right? But a lot of people walk around with these intuitions, like be it fear or worry or whatever it is, and they're in constant state of fear, like walking around is like, oh shit, like, oh, I hope nothing's going to happen to me. But it's an intuition is not a state for you to be in. It's a signal for you to do something about.
Yes.
And when you do something about it, then you can either take more educated decisions or actions, or you can just stop fearing.
Yeah.
I love that, Otto. I really love the fact you're talking about avoiding and interrupting violence, aren't you? And you've spoken earlier about a story you had when you were walking down the street with your brother and your father. Can you just tell us that story?
Yeah, I think there's a good example of what self-defense really is, or in my view, anyway. Whereas a lot of people want to deal with that problem, and I mentioned those two questions before. What if someone attacks me from behind in a dark alley, and if someone attacks me with a knife?
Yeah. Which is a genuine fear of a lot of people listening.
Yeah, absolutely. But this is a good story that actually applies to both those things. So,
and men as well as women.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yes. So one night I was about 8-9 years old. My brother was 1 year older. We were going with my dad to his work in the middle of the night. He had a cleaning job at night. It was about 2-3 o'clock in the morning. It was dark, no one else around. We were walking through some back streets in Surrey Hills, kind of like a suburb close to the city, old terrace houses, trees lining the streets. And we're walking through some back streets, and this dude is walking towards us. And he's medium height, skinny, wearing a t-shirt, jeans, carrying a plastic bag. And he walked towards us and past us, and he was now behind us. And when he was behind us, my dad turned to my brother and said, turn around, see what he's doing.
Yeah.
So my brother turned around, and he said that the man has turned again. He's walking towards us. Now, my dad straight away reached into his inside pocket, pulled out a little Swiss Army knife, opened it up, turned around, and held it up menacingly in the air.
Wow.
So what do you think the guy did? I mean, he just turned around and ran away.
Yes, I don't suppose that he approached you then.
Sorry?
I don't suppose he approached you then with a knife in hand.
He didn't approach us any further. He turned around and ran away. But at the same time, the guy hadn't actually done anything. He was just walking towards us. Maybe he forgot something at home, right? So he wasn't threatening us. He wasn't, running at us with a knife in his hand or anything like that. He was just walking. Yeah,
but your dad trusted his intuition.
Yeah, so my dad just acted on his intuition. He threatened the guy took off. And, if you listen to the story like this, then my dad also sounds a bit crazy. Just to threaten this dude out of nowhere, kind of, yeah? But 2 days later, we get up in the morning to go to school. My dad's up already listening to the radio, making our breakfast as usual. And there's a breaking news story. So my dad is all worked up, and 5 people have been stabbed overnight.
Wow.
In King's Cross.
Wow.
And they gave a description of the guy, and it sounded just like that guy. My dad was adamant it was him. And a few days later, they caught him, and it was.
Whoa.
Now, the thing is that those 5 people, almost guaranteed also had feelings that something was going to happen, that something was wrong before it happened. But they just reacted too late or not at all.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about was that you avoided the situation. You interrupted probably what he was going to do. Who knows what he was going to do, but you were in a position to pre-think and interrupt and avoid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm saying those 5 people most likely could have done that as well.
Yeah.
But a lot of people just don't know that they should do that.
And it's
But
great.
it's okay to do that, that they should, and like they don't know how to react.
Yeah.
But at the same time, everything that I teach is really instinctual in a way. It's very natural for you to do that.
Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it? Because really, if you think about any time in life, if we don't actually trust our intuition and go with it, there's always an icky feeling left behind. Like we think, I should have done that. My intuition was screaming out to tell me something. I should have done that. So this is no different, really, is it? It's just actually listening to the vibrations your body's telling you and acting accordingly. Yeah. And if you need to run like hell, run like hell.
Yeah. Well, yeah, good point. I mean, you don't have to threaten the guy with a knife, if you don't have one.
Yeah.
And you're probably not telling all our listeners to carry knives on you, are you? I know you're in Australia. I mean, we're in New Zealand, but I don't think we're allowed to carry knives.
I mean, you could have done a number of things. You could have ran away. You could have got on your phone, or like knocked on someone's door, screamed for help, or confront them in a different way. All sorts of things you can do, but doing nothing just makes things worse, and that's what a lot of people do.
So in your training, do you find, Otto, that some people are much more in tune with their intuition than other people? Do you have to train people what their intuition looks like or feels like? I mean, for me, I would describe it as a sort of personal, quiet voice in my head that's telling me to do something that either I obey or don't obey. But how would you describe it, and how does it vary from person to person?
Everyone's got intuition. I think the main problem with intuition is that people don't know how it works, and for that reason they constantly override it, so they don't give it the credit that it's due. If you understand how intuition works, then the knowledge or the intuition that you have is probably just fine. It's enough. It's really just about trusting it and taking action on it. So intuition, when you understand how it works, intuition is a natural defense mechanism that we have, that everyone has. Right? So you have a certain belief system that you've built up over the years of your childhood and now that where you decide things that you want or don't want, that you stand with or stand against, the things that you like or don't like, and your intuition is going to give you feedback on that in all sorts of situations, right? So like when you go about your day and your conscious mind can only deal with so much, can't listen to conversations on the next table, you can only focus on a certain part of reality, right? There's all sorts of noises going on. There's all sorts of people walking past. There's all sorts of things happening around you that you can't consciously focus on.
Yes.
Right? But your subconscious is scanning everything. So it's scanning a lot more than you're consciously aware of.
So you're saying to be in tune with that a lot more, to listen to it a lot more, to focus on it a lot more. Do you think you can train that so that you become more aware the more you start to listen to it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the thing it's already there. It's then when you understand, it's just a matter then of trusting it. And going with it. But when you then understand that when you encounter a problem around you, when you encounter a potentially dangerous situation around you, your subconscious is already going to evaluate that, and it's going to bypass your conscious brain.
Yeah.
And it's just going to give you a hunch or suspicion or gut feeling.
Can I give you an example of a situation I found myself in once? And I don't actually know what you'd say to this, but you said earlier that we all react in completely different ways to a given situation. Some people might run, some people might just stay there and be helpless. I once was burgled and I was alone. I was probably about 32 years old and I was asleep at night and I heard a noise downstairs. So I went to the top of the stairs and I looked down and there was a chap standing there with the front door open. He'd got his hand through the letterbox and he was standing there with an iron bar in his hand. And I picked up the phone and I completely froze. So I could dial the number on the phone, But when the 999 answered in England and they said fire, police or ambulance, I actually couldn't say anything. Not a single word came out of my mouth. And I think I was more terrified that I couldn't speak than of the man downstairs with the iron bar. And I have to say that the police were very good. They said, stay on the line. We know where you are. We've got your number. We're coming round. And they said, don't put the phone down. We know that you're there and we'll carry on speaking to you. And they did until a car arrived. But I was so shocked that I couldn't speak. And I never thought that I would be short for words. But I froze and I had absolutely nothing to say. And I would have, if he'd have walked up the stairs towards me, I probably would have still sat there. I couldn't move.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting story. Well, that kind of goes to a different subject. So the intuitions always work. They're always on. It's just a matter of then you're doing something about it or not. The thing is that where I think you should learn to do something about it is not when you're in a self-defense situation, but in everyday situations, in everyday life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like at home, at work, at the supermarket, those kinds of situations when it's not dangerous at all, but intuitions also fire in those situations.
Yeah.
You might be at a shop, for example, and someone's trying to sell you something and you kind of have a funny feeling about it, but the guy's got the best sales pitch and he says everything right, and he says everything right, but you're like, yeah, I don't know, and then you buy it anyway, because he didn't say anything wrong, and you're like, you justify it to yourself, saying, well, he's right, he says everything the right way, so you ignore your intuition.
Mm-hmm.
And then afterwards, whatever you bought breaks down, and you say, damn, I knew that was going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone's kind of been in situations like that before, but that's really when you train to follow your intuitions and follow your what you really want.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you practice that in easy situations, because that enables you then to apply it when it's more difficult, or potentially dangerous even.
Yeah. So can I ask, so you've obviously been training people for many, many years in martial arts. When you've trained women in the past, do you find that they came to you like when there might have been like an attack in the area or a local rapist around? Would the training have peaked at them times, or was there just a lot of people in general wanting self-defense?
Yeah, you probably get a little spike when something happens. People, want to quickly do a self-defense course.
Mm-hmm.
When there's increased violence, sure.
So, your idea of training, like teaching people from the outset about intuition and about awareness and prevention, rather than actually throwing you over your shoulder when you're being attacked from behind.
Well, because it's much easier to deal with it like that, yeah.
Absolutely. And do you find that that's just where the flow of empowerment is going in general for people? People want this empowerment. They want knowledge. Do you think because we're in this world of, self-development, is it going inside with your philosophies?
I think in general, yes. In regards to self-defense, I think a lot of people don't even associate that with self-defense yet. So
Mm-hmm.
I want to change that. I want to change how people think about this, because it's really an empowerment problem, not a fighting move problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating to hear. I was when I was looking at stats as well in Australia, I read that violence against women is estimated to cost the Australian economy a staggering 22 billion a year. So actually, if you think about the course that you're putting out there, I was wondering whether you have been in contact with the government to see what their philosophy is in keeping their women safe. Do you know government policy, or have you been interested in working with them and putting your course forward?
I have been interested in working with them, but I haven't put it forward yet. So you're actually giving me some good statistics.
I mean, 22 billion, we're talking a lot of money. I mean, you could say to the Australian government, give me half of that and I'll save you the other half.
Oh, yeah.
11 billion in your pocket wouldn't be bad, would it, Otto?
Then we could happily be marketing managers.
Did you say billion or million?
Billion, 22 billion. It costs not the government, but the economy
even
a year.
10% of that would be good.
Yeah, it's extraordinary numbers. I mean, it's absolutely staggering, isn't it?
When we were both doing like all of this research on self-defense for women, it comes up with all the old typical things that you expect. Like it took me a long time to find anything new, but I found things like 8 self-defense moves for every woman should practice. But of course, they're on the internet, and like they might look fancy, but again, how are you going to use them in real life? There were 10 self-defense strategies, 7 self-defense techniques for women, and all of these were great. And then they were all very, very, useful, and they look like they could get you fit and healthy and that kind of thing. But it took me a long time to find anything like similar to your philosophy. And I did read one website which was very lovely, very informative, and it was their very, very last paragraph where it basically said awareness and prevention can cover 99% of your self-defense needs. Stopping an attack,
focusing on the ninja moves.
Yeah, stopping an attack before it goes physical, and that's what both Sue and I think. Everybody is just still talking about the ninja moves or different types of martial arts, or which, it's great to go out and do. That's all fine as well. But we love your philosophy about.
And 99% is staggering, isn't it?
It's huge.
99%.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing, like the interesting part about that also is, ninja moves are like good. I mean, I do martial arts. I've been doing martial arts for a long time, and it's great. I'm not saying anything against that, but like, you got to put that into perspective. The thing is, if you were in a war zone and everyone was fighting each other, then you need those techniques because you're at risk to be attacked. But the thing is, we're living in a pretty safe environment, or pretty safe society, right? And when you position yourself as a non-victim, like, most of the problems go away, because there's only like when we look at the example again of the herd of antelopes, that are being hunted by the lions, there's only a very small percentage of those that are actually at risk.
Yeah.
So, like, you should firstly worry about you not being part of that of that pool, in a way,
So, Otto, you talked earlier about becoming a better version of yourself, and you had dreams and goals that you wanted to follow. And you mentioned that you, when we were talking earlier, that you needed to become more confident, more assertive, that you wanted to set boundaries for yourself and express yourself in different ways. Can you tell us how you as a person did that for yourself? What did it take for you to do that as a man and on your journey into being empowered? What did that look like for you?
Well, firstly, I read a lot of books, on personal development, I guess, like from when I was a teenager.
Right.
So I was always just interested in developing myself and being a better version, because, like, if I wanted to achieve my goals and dreams, I needed to be different than what I was.
Yeah.
So then it's a choice for me to stay like that and just taking it on the chin, or I'm just going to do something about it, So, I mean, for a lot of years, it was just really reading books. And the problem with reading books, although books are great and I still read books, but the problem with a lot of the books was then that it's still up to you to take action on that.
Yeah.
Which I didn't do for a long time as well.
And obviously you found an area, that sort of niche market, haven't you? This is an area that really needs to be put out there, to be developed. People need education on the area of being empowered in self-defense. So where can we find you? Can we find your courses online? Can we find you on YouTube? We gather you're about to publish a book. Can you tell us more about your book?
Yes, well, the books should be out in a couple of months.
How exciting.
Yes. It's been a long time coming. I've been writing it for a long time. The book just pretty much describes my philosophy of how this works. As far as I'm concerned, self-defense is much more about you being empowered, being more confident, assertive, trusting your feelings, setting boundaries, being determined to express yourself and be who you are. And if you do that, you don't really have to worry about self-defense situations so much. Firstly, like, it doesn't really help to worry about that in the first place when you understand how intuition works. But when you empower yourself as a person, firstly, you're much more able to deal with self-defense situations or anything that happens that leads up to that. And it's also much less likely to happen in the first place, because you're a different person, and you're not a victim anymore. And you can find me on the internet at projectfempowerment.com.
Yeah.
Also, Project Fempowerment on Facebook and Instagram, YouTube as well. And there's videos out there, and blog posts and so forth about what I do.
Well, we obviously love anything that's to do with empowering people in general, not just women, man, women and child. We are all into empowerment, and this is what this podcast is all about, and giving them tools to deal with life. And so we absolutely love your philosophy. But is there one or two things our listeners can take away with them today? What is the main thing? Because as you've just said yourself, you read lots of personal development books as you were growing up, and then you didn't take action. So, of course, what we'd love people to do is read your book, understand your philosophy, but take action. So, what are one or two things our listeners can take away from this today?
The main things that you need to focus on is being more confident, being assertive to express who you are and what you will stand for and what you won't, what you like and what you don't like. You have to tell people that. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to practice that when it's dangerous, when someone's cornering you in a dark alley. You want to practice that all the time, because if you shrink down for other people and you let them take advantage of you when it's not dangerous, how are you going to change that when it really counts? That's why we had that problem. Like, if you practice ninja moves all day, it doesn't mean that you can apply that in a real life situation. You really got to practice doing these things in all of life, and then you're much better prepared to apply them when it's more serious and less likely to happen in the first place. So you just become a more empowered version of yourself.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? And also, if you're not speaking your likes or dislikes, and if you're not being vocal about them generally in life, it goes against who you are and your values anyway. So it's actually good practice in anything, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I love the fact, actually, what you're talking about is accessible to all women, regardless of their age, race, level of fitness or physical ability.
Exactly, yes.
And it also addresses far more than just assaults by strangers, doesn't it, as well?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the principles apply to anything. Mm-hmm. And then it's just a matter of evaluating who you are and what situation that you're in.
Just to summarise, you're really talking about being aware. You're talking about recognising danger signs, effective boundary setting. You're talking about assertiveness. You're talking about verbal self-defence skills. And they're all strategies which empower women, men, children to stop assaults in the very early stages, aren't you?
Absolutely, yeah.
But equally empowering you right from the beginning. So know who you are, know your values. Yeah. Be loud, be proud about the things you like, the things you don't like, and to start making practice right here, right now, rather than, as you say, if you ever did get into a difficult situation, then you're kind of already empowered and you feel stronger for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Otto, it's been so great to have you with us today. Obviously, the information you've passed on to us reflects your long journey on your own personal development as well. You couldn't pass on the wisdom that you have to us today and the skills and techniques without going on your own journey. So I just want to honour you on that journey that you've been walking on, and just say thank you so much for coming on board today.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute delight, and we will wrap up now.
It was a pleasure, and thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome. Good luck on your journey. Good luck with your book launch. Thank you, Otto Heutling.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being with us today. For us to inspire others to live their magnificently imperfect life, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or on your podcast app. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Pods with Posh and Paul. We can't wait for you to join us on our next episode. Love, light and peace.